I'm so excited. You've made it to the end. You've learned so much. And now we're to the point where we can put it all together. So we're going to go to my Excel sheet that I use all of the time. And you're going to see how I think about my life expenses and my assets. So you can see I have all of these different tabs. Like I have an annual budget, a monthly budget, I have my student loans budget, I have my car loan, and then I also do this thing where I think about depreciation. I have my retirement investing, I have the emergency fund planning, I have my net worth calculation, I have some scratch work, I have my real estate considerations, I have my blog considerations, I have my Pinterest considerations, and then finally I have my assets. And so my assets is really kind of the idea of putting all that we've kind of talked about all together so that you can see what it looks like just like in your own daily life, and the concepts are synthesizing at this point, right? So I'll preface this by saying I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I did this for fun. I will go back to this sheet and do it for fun. Like I can spend a whole entire Saturday doing this. Like I have done this before where I've spent like 8 hours on a Saturday just doing this for fun and looking at all of these different considerations. Partially because I have like huge baby fever. I've always thought about children. So you can see like I've thought about, okay, if I have 3 kids, what will be the financial implications? Yes, it sounds crazy, but I like to plan. So I'm saying, oh, I would like to have 3 kids on average. So I'm going to think about what it could be like financially if I did have kids. So this is what um, this is what this is. It's like, okay, when the kid is 1, when the kid is 3, when the kid is 2, when the kid is 4. Here's the introduction of one of the kids. When the kid is 1, when the kid is 4, when the kid is 6, all the way up to retirement age, right? Okay, so this is after-tax income. So I'm just going to assume that if I have a partner, this is like in the future. This isn't necessarily today. It's like a future type of projection. This is saying, okay, I'm hoping that my combined income, if I have a spouse, is 200 grand. And you can see that this is after tax. So I applied the 25.47% tax rate, which I forgot what state's tax rate that includes, but it's some state in America. So this is the after-tax income. And I'm assuming that this is constant, which isn't necessarily true, right? This isn't a necessarily true assumption. And which I have done, if I was being more precise and making up stories, right? Oh my God, my husband will be a doctor or something, you know what I mean? Just making up stories. Obviously, you can't do this unless you actually have the information, but I like doing it for fun. But you can see for your own life all along. You can say, okay, well, in this part of my career, for those 10 years, I expect to have that on average. And then like maybe there's a 20% jump here. Or you could say, well, the average raise is this percent, so I'm going to increase my salary each year by that. You could do it that way too. But this is how constant will make it easy for us to do the math. So then after home costs. So this is with the assumption that I have a 15-year mortgage, right? 15, the count is 15. And so it would be a mortgage of about $42.92. Sorry. So you can see for those 15 years, there's a significant reduction. And then these years includes like what the average property tax is for that home. And so I'm pretty sure, yeah. Yeah, interesting. So it's probably a home that is fairly expensive, probably around $1 million. Then we can see the after every day, which I have allocated $24,000 for my everyday budget. So that's including food, it's including transportation, it's including health insurance or like HSA contributions. It's including a lot of things, which I think is Fairly reasonable, right? To say that those expenses will cost you probably around $2,000 a month, right? And then you'll see I have a Roth 401k. So I'm projecting that each spouse should contribute 19 grand a year. And the reason I'm not doing the Roth IRA is because there's that contribution limit of 6 grand. And then there's also an income limitation. So may or may not be in that, but I'm just going to be safe and just consider the Roth 401k in general, right? So we'll see that this stays constant. It's just $19,000 a year for each spouse for a total of $38,000 a year in total savings and family income. But yeah, and you can see way more money when you don't have to pay a mortgage, right? Then we have the 529. So the 529 is the plan to save for children's education. And so I'm saying, I'm going to put in about 10 grand a year. These are 10 grand. This is increased to 15 grand. The reason I probably did it this way and then there's nothing here is so that I could get close probably to funding like a 4-year public school education for children, for these 3 children, hypothetical children. So we could also just make this 15 grand too, and this 15 grand, and this 15 grand too, but there's not gonna be a huge difference. So then we see education costs. And so this is just like the cost of daycare, or yeah, daycare essentially, right? And so I'm just gonna run that cost to about 10 grand. But you see, I'm gonna send them to public schools, and so there won't be an obvious education cost. Now, obviously, we have these other random costs for kids, but that should be probably picked up in everyday expenses, or we might have to just dip into our savings, right? But then next we see munis. So these are the municipal bonds that we talked about that have that beautiful tax advantage. And so what I did was just I said, okay, I have about 16 grand left. I'm going to put 25% of that money into my municipal bonds, and then put 35% of that income into stocks. And so what is that? 35 plus 25 is 60%. So that's saying, okay, even after all of this saving, really, right? These are really kind of two saving categories. Two saving categories. I'm going to still put money into munis and stocks. And so you can see that after we pay for our munis and our stocks, I only have about $6,300 left over annually, which is about $525 a month. So basically that's kind of saying every month I can just spend $525 on anything, right? It's just fun, right? And then you can see it goes up. But there's a benefit here because our munis balance is increasing, and we can see that it's going to be increasing by a rate of 3.12%. So every year it's increasing, and by the end of the line, it's at 338. And then we have our stocks balance, which is increasing by 8%. These are after inflation numbers, I assume. Let's see, let's check our munis. Yes, so it's after inflation. That's the way I calculated it. And so it's increasing every year. And then you can see that I calculated this thing. So the saving percent of pre-tax income. So pre-tax, I'm saving only 12%, right? Right? And then the post-tax is about, could be almost up to 70%. So those are crazy numbers when you kind of think about it, but it really kind of isn't when you, especially if you're making 200 grand, like post-tax, if you're saving, if you can spend 30% of your money in some other capacity, it's fine, right? But that is to say, this is just a general picture. This isn't exactly what my life is going to look like or anything. It's just an exercise to go through with yourself and to show you like all of this like consideration of what your finances can look like in all aspects of life, especially if you have a family, if you have to pay for education, if you want to invest in your retirement account, but you also want to, you've maxed that out. So you need to invest in municipal bonds, you need to invest in stocks, right? You have a mortgage, you want to buy a house, like just so you can see all of this. This isn't like necessarily what is going to be my life, and it's not necessarily going to be your life. But let's see the implications of this. So we can see, it's kind of annoying how it's like, this thing is there, right? So we can see total assets. So this is kind of almost a consideration of net worth, right? We're thinking about net worth now. We can see, so this is actually assuming a house that is 700 grand. It wasn't a million. It's at around a million, but it's assuming a 700 grand house. So that means that over however many years, what this is 32 years, right? So let's just see how many years this was. This is 31. So assuming you buy the house the year before or something, whatever. 32 years, we can even change this and make this 31, whatever. Your house is going to be worth, maybe let's make it 32 again so we can get that pretty 9 million. So 32 years. So in 32 years, your house is going to be worth probably around 3.3 million, which isn't a crazy thought because we're using the assumption that, you know, home prices appreciate by 5%, which isn't like crazy. We can see though, like if we take into account inflation, right, your house is really only worth $1.4 million. Like if you had bought it today, the house is worth $1.4 million, but that's huge. Like $1.4 million compared to $700,000 is literally double. So your house kind of doubled, right? Pre-inflation. It's going to look like it's more later, but it's not, right? That's the actual purchasing power of it. The actual purchasing power today would be 1.4. It wouldn't be 3.3. So we see that our Roth 401k, where you invested in both a REIT and the S&P index fund, would be around $4.8 million. Pretty good, right? That's the combination of both like me and my supposed partner investing in the Roth 401k. So pretty good, right? Pretty good. Especially when you think about the idea that like we only spent 38,000 together for what, 32-ish years or whatever. Like we only put in 1.2 million, but by the end we have 4.8, right? Huge difference. And then we can see stocks. We just took that number here. That's stocks that we're just saving in. We have our health savings account where, you know, we probably used some of the money that we put in, but we did the maximum amount every year for your family and we took out some of it. Okay, it's at about 100 grand maybe. And then munis, we got that number from here, that munis balance. And then we see our CDs or certificate of deposits. We're just keeping our money there as an emergency fund. So, right, so it's basically what? It's literally a whole year emergency fund, right? Like our everyday expenses for each year are $24,000. So it's a $24,000 1-year emergency fund right there. And then an emergency fund of $2,000 to just have on hand, to just have 1 month on hand. And then you can see what percentage of your assets is allocated to each. So you can see that actually, typically, someone's home is their greatest investment, and their home is worth the most. But you can see here, actually, it's our retirement accounts that would be worth the most at 53%, then followed by our home. And then stocks would be 4%, stocks would be 5%, munis would be 4%, and health savings account would be 1%. That 24 grand, it's like crazy when you think that 24 grand could be only 0.3% of your assets, but it's true. And then like cash of 2 grand being 0.02, not even close to a percentage point, for a total of 100%, which is about 9 million. Yes, in today's world, that's only $4.2 million. But if you had $4.2 million, if that was your net worth today, you would be ecstatic, right? And you're at $9 million in net worth, still below, right, for our life insurance talk, we know that that's still below that threshold for estate tax of 11.4 today, but you're still obviously doing super well. So this is just to show you the effects of savings too, right? Look at this. When I was doing this, I was thinking to myself, how can I get the most assets? I was thinking to myself, how can I get the highest here without doing much work, right? So I know that I'm going to want to buy a house, and okay, a $700,000 house isn't a crazy thought for like me wanting to live in a big city, right? And I know I want to do that. If I want to retire well, I'm going to have to save here. If I don't want to pay for my kids to go to college, which will be the social thing to do probably still, I'm going to need to save, but I don't need to save more than 10 or 15 grand a year. But on a $200,000 household income, that shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, it's going to be harder later if I don't do it now, because I can also take into the fact that 10 or 15 grand a year is going to, it's going to be invested. And so then the total balance will be higher than how much I contributed, right? Because of compound interest. And then, okay, I'll put the daycare costs in here. And then I'll just save for Moody's and stocks, because why not? I want a little bit more into my, net worth. So I want higher assets. And when you think about it too, let's think about it. This is just our total assets. When we think about our total debt, how much total debt would I actually probably have? Let's say I want to buy a new car. Even let's say I want to buy like a new fancy Tesla and I spend like 70 grand. Even if I did that, I could just literally go into my munis account. Just take it out there. You know what I'm saying? You could like, why not? Just take it out from there. Why would I just like be taking it out of my everyday expenses? I wouldn't be doing that. I would just be taking it out there, and then so I wouldn't have any debt. If I wanted to buy like a vacation home, let's say I want to buy a vacation home in Costa Rica or something, and that place is going to cost 250 grand. I can literally just take 250 grand from my munis account. Again, I can just take it from there. I don't have any debt. I don't have another mortgage. So what I like about this system is that it kind of gives you a beautiful mix of retirement, emergency savings, huge investment savings, kids' expenses, education expenses, your primary property asset. So it gives you all of it combined, and it shows you just how easy it is if you just plan it. You don't have to think that hard. Like by the time that I retire, I could easily have 9 million. And if I put all of this stuff in auto savings and auto payment, I won't even have to think about it. I just made this easy for myself. So I encourage you guys to kind of create some type of system like this to really kind of think about long term where you want to be at retirement. It's really, it's very detailed, but it's a really easy way to kind of just like change the numbers and look and see where you would be. And so that you can ensure that you understand your financial health, you understand your net worth, you understand your savings, you understand your retirement, you understand your debt situation, and see how you can have a very productive future where you could easily easily be a millionaire or a multimillionaire.